Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Rene LeRoux, the Executive Director of the Capital District Upstate New York Basketball Hall of Fame. And with us is our very special guest, local historian, basketball historian, Bob Pezano. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Rene.
Bob, this is our 5th year of the anniversary of the Capital District Basketball Hall of Fame, and you've been a huge instrumental part of this and my valuable partner in setting this whole procedure up. And the first year was an amazing year, 2009, and it was a virtual who's who of basketball that came to that first evening dinner.
Yeah, you just saw the history of Section 2 basketball just unfold before us that evening. People came back from Los Angeles. Jason McCreath, Dickie Grubar came up from North Carolina. We, of course, had Barry Kramer local. Sam Perkins came in. People traveled from all over the country, and it was just a very special evening, and the smiles on everyone's faces just right away said this is going to be successful.
And we had Jim Boeheim and Doug Craig Forth and gave a funny speech, and we had many local college coaches and high school coaches, and including the great high school coaches who had won the state championships, Sawsville and
Gary
Denola. And we had Willie Dean and James Thomas in the house that evening, along with Rayshawn Freeman and Jason McCreath. So we had the top 4 players there from those teams.
Right. If you remember, the first year we concentrated on the previous 50 years of Section 2 basketball. So it was 1958 to 2008. And I guess 1958 would be the Bill Curvin era. He would have been from the early stages. And then, of course, it went right up to the 2008 season.
And it's really amazing because over the past 5 years, we're still inducting great names. And this year, our 5th anniversary year, we have Bill Tulaski, who played with Barry on the Schaefer Brewers and Weedican Wonders, and a great college coach, or a great high school coach at CBA, and a great college player at George Washington University, scoring 1,336 points. So even in our 5th year, we still have great names and legends like Tulaski.
There's great tradition in Section 2, and you're correct. There are still some great names on the list. Bill Tulaski being one. He actually was just a little bit before the 1958 cutoff the first year, and he was a great high school player, a great player at George Washington, and that I got to see him play with the Schaefer Brewers, and he was the ultimate competitor, and he often was matched up against great players, and he more than held his own, and he was a key reason for their success. And then I had the honor, I'll say, of sitting on the opposite bench when he coached at CBA, and I was an assistant at Linton, and his teams were really well coached, disciplined, shared the ball. They did all the things you wanted winning teams to do, and CBA epitomized that. And of course, he had the great wins, in sectional tournaments. Probably the highlight being the upset of the Sam Perkins Shaker team. And Bill just came up with a way to beat you.
Bob, also joining us in this year's 5th year anniversary induction class is the late Eddie Catino.
Ed Catino is very dear to me. He actually was my freshman coach at Linton when I was in 9th grade. But Ed, again, is pre-1958. He played at Mount Pleasant for the legendary Sig Makovsky. The one exception, I guess, we made the first year. And I remember talking to you about Sig Makovsky. And when I went over his record, I think it was 461 wins and 35 losses. You thought I was mistaken, or questioned whether I left off a digit or two. And anyway, Eddie played for Sig Makovsky at Mount Pleasant. Great teams. I believe Ed only lost 1 game in high school. He then went on to George Washington and played on some great teams at George Washington. Played in the NCAA tournament. Went on to the Army. Played on an undefeated Army team with Tom Gola, who was a great player from that era. And then he came back to Schenectady and became a phys ed teacher and a coach. And he was the freshman coach at Linton, part of a great coaching staff with Walt Prislow and Bill Rapavy. And, Eddie was just an exceptional player, and he could really teach the game. And, he had a son, Michael, who, went on to Siena and became a great player and is a member of the Hall of Fame. From his days at Chalmont, Linton, and Siena. But Eddie was a great man, and unfortunately we lost him about 9 months ago. But well deserved to be in this Hall of Fame. He was a really good player.
Yeah, many great stories about Ed. And Bill Tulaski, who also went to George Washington, told me that Eddie Catino before him was a great player and certainly was a great name there before him. And we're very fortunate to be putting him in.
You know, you want good coaching at the younger levels. And although Walt Prislow tended to be the face of Linton basketball during a very successful era, you know, the coaching at the younger levels, and, you know, starting with Ed Catino in ninth grade, teaching you the fundamentals. I can still picture him, you know, teaching a rocker step and, you know, jab steps and things like that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Linton produced a few pretty good offensive players, because Ed did a great job of teaching the fundamentals while being in the background most of the time.
Another interesting story about an inductee this year is a gentleman that you know very well, former Union coach Bill Scanlon.
Very fortunate again. You know, you don't have any input when you're on a college campus playing ball as to who's going to be hired as the coach, but at the end of my sophomore year, Gary Walters, who had played at Princeton with Bill Bradley and himself was maybe only 26 years old, was hired to be the varsity coach at Union. And, you know, a coaching change is scary, and you don't know how the person's going to play or, you know, maybe react to your game. And Gary Walters hired a young Bill Scanlon, who had played at Shenendehowa a few years earlier and then gone on to Springfield College, had a successful career there, wanted to coach, like many people in the Springfield fraternity, had coached at a junior college, Holyoke, and then was hired as the assistant coach at Union. And although I was going to be a junior, I wasn't going to play directly for him. He became an institution at Union, and he's been a good friend, became very successful. Gary Walters stayed 3 years, had great success. And at the end of the 3 years, he went back to Princeton to be Pete Carrill's assistant, and Bill was elevated to the varsity coaching position. And I believe his first two teams went 20-4. He was New York State Coach of the Year, a District Coach of the Year, ended up serving on the NCAA Rules Committee, he was just a great coach. You know, he took his players and molded them into nice teams, good teams, played solid defense, and he's the winningest coach in the history of Union College basketball.
That's outstanding. On a side note, of course, we want to congratulate you on being an inductee of our Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
And you join teammates Jim Tedisco and Tom Backer and Mike Doyle.
Yes, those were all people I was fortunate enough to play with at Union. It was just everything came together at the right moment. Gary Walters as the coach. Tom Backer had been a great player at Catholic High, had been recruited by Duke. Mike Doyle was a winner from Linton, had an exceptional career there, was the Class A Player of the Year, and places like Vermont were recruiting him. Chuck Abba, who was honored last year, was someone who came back to us when NYU dropped basketball. And, you know, he won every place where he played, whether it be at Linton, where he played on a 19-3 team, a 22-0 team, and then at Union, I think his three teams went 19-3, 16-7, and 21-4 or something like that. 20-4, but and then of course Jimmy Tedisco. He was
tell us about Jimmy.
Well, Jimmy was an exceptional high school player. I mean, if you just looked at him, you said, how good could he be? And he was recruited by Syracuse, so there were people in the coaching ranks who realized Jimmy was an exceptional talent. You know, it seems like a lot of quick athletic players are just that. They go to the hoop, they're slashers, they may not have the jump shot. And then it seems like jump shooters sometimes don't have that quickness to go to the hoop. Jimmy could do both. He was like that pitcher who could keep you off balance with an off-speed pitch and then throw the heat by you. If you came up on Jimmy, he went right by you. He was quick as a cat. If you played off him, respecting that quickness, he had a great jump shot. And he could jump well. He was a good athlete. He was fearless. He was confident. And in high school, his final game, he scored 55 points. And it was against the team from New York City, a Catholic school from New York City. He made faces in the crowd for that accomplishment in Sports Illustrated. He then chose Union. and he came to Union and had just a great career. Averaged 29 and change as a sophomore, more like 25 as a junior, and 21 as a senior. That may not seem like a logical progression to people, but the teams got better and better and better, and Jimmy more or less, gave up some of his scoring roles to, become a more complete player, pass the ball, distribute the ball. We had other people who could score, so he became a real winner. And in our last 2 years, we went 18-3 and 19-3, and Jimmy was like an All-American in college and was the all-time leading scorer at Union at the time.
And back then, in those days, you got to play against Siena and UAlbany in the winter tournaments.
We did. It was the Capital District Tournament. It was usually played the week between Christmas and New Year's. There happened to be 4 teams in the area: RPI, Albany State, Siena, and Union that participated in the tournament. When we were in college, the tournament was always held at the Albany State Gym. It was relatively new at the time and had the best seating, and it was the best arena for this. And I can remember taking the court. We played Siena both my junior and senior years, and I can remember taking the court at, let's say, 6 o'clock for the 6:30 start or whatever, 10 after 6, and you had to make your way through the standing room only crowd. It was a big draw. We were fortunate to beat Siena both junior and senior years, played Albany for the championship each year, and we won one of those games and lost the other. And
was Freddie Shear on Siena then?
Freddie was on Siena, and he was our biggest concern. He could score the ball. He was a very smooth player. He was our biggest concern, and we were fortunate enough to beat him.
Was Doc Sowers coaching UAlbany then?
Doc was the coach at UAlbany, and he was a master. You knew when you were going against Doc's teams that they were going to be extremely well prepared, very disciplined, and we were lucky to have Gary Walters, who had played at the highest level on a Final Four team at Princeton with Bill Bradley, and he had been coached, by Butch Van Bredikoff, and I believe before that he was coached by Carrill in high school. So Gary Walters was also a very, very knowledgeable person. He went on to be the chairperson for the NCAA tournament committee and has had a great career in the game of basketball. But wow, you felt like you were part of a chess match when it was Gary Walters against Doc Sowers. You felt like every move was critical, and they were super games. I think we did know it at the time. We were part of something special. We had extreme confidence in our coach, and Doc was already on his way to a Hall of Fame career. You don't win 702 games in the end. And Doc didn't have the greatest talent in the world.
That's true.
He took players he knew he could mold into a team, and they were just very difficult to play. And I think one thing that indicates coaching prowess is maybe after a timeout, the adjustments that a coach makes, or during halftime. And it seemed like Doc's teams always came out and scored after a timeout, or always made adjustments. And we had some very memorable games against them.
Now this year also we're inducting Bryan Fury, who's the current head coach of St. Rose, and also in the same evening Mike Long will be receiving the Sam Perkins Sportsmanship Award. And Sam was an inaugural inductee and had a great 17-year NBA career, and came back the first year and gave a wonderful speech. Sam's a wonderful guy. But Mike Long built that St. Rose program, and Bryan has taken it to one of the top Division II programs in the country. So a great night for St. Rose coming up.
It certainly is, and it's been a wonderful Division II program, and it's nice to have them in the area. Just for historical purposes, at one time, Albany, Siena, Union, RPI, they were called college division teams. And while Siena may have been given scholarships at the time, it more or less was Division II and Division III more or less clumped together. A few years later, it became Division II and Division III. So teams like Siena, who were Division II at the time, they were given scholarships. Teams like RPI, Union, Albany State, as it was referred to at the time, they remained at the Division III level, and then eventually, of course, UAlbany went up to the Division II level and then Division I. But St. Rose played Division II basketball, and you're right, Mike Long put the foundation in place. Bryan Fury took the ball and ran with it, literally, and brought in some great players and molded some great teams. I think Bryan's a great evaluator of talent. He really, can judge talent, and he had a great run. They are now in a very difficult league, and they're more than competitive. He's just done a great job.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to Mike especially for still being a part of the program as Bryan's assistant and having been there for a long time. And Mike looks amazingly the same now as he did 30 years ago.
He looks great, and he's a great man, and there's a reason why it seems everything he touches. I think he was an assistant for a while at CBA, and just about every place he goes, things turn out favorably.
Right. Now this year, as in the past years, we do have a couple of women inductees, and Nicole Conway, who played at Bethlehem and then Boston College, I believe, had a phenomenal career, but also Lori Peretta Birmingham, who was Todd Birmingham's wife, who played at Waterville, and was she was in the last class at Linton High School. And with Bill Scanlon, his two daughters, that you know very well, also were inductees before. So we have good female representation in the Hall of Fame, too.
Oh, we have great representation. Anita Kaplan was a member of a national championship Stanford team many years ago. She was the center on the team. You mentioned Jen and Kelly Scanlon. Jen played at Duke, was one of the all-time great three-point shooters there. Kelly played at Tulane. Some of the other people you mentioned, Nicole went on to Boston College, as did the Gottstein sisters, and Becky had a very successful career there. There's just been a number of great players, that have come through and that have been very successful. Julie McBride,
right?
Catholic High, and then on to Syracuse. So there have been some really really good players. Laurie went on to Colgate, where she had a great career, 1,000-point scorer. So it's been girls basketball around here has been special.
Do you think Bill got to see the girls play a lot?
It was difficult because of his coaching at the time. I kind of remember him being able to go to Jen's last game at Duke. And I did go to a game with him when Duke came up to play at Manhattan. That could have been, Duke's way of coming up to the Northeast for her. I think she was a senior. Kelly played at Siena, as I recollect, one night later in her career. So Tulane did come up and bring a game up this way. But it, of course, was difficult for Bill because he was coaching, and the busiest time of year was the time that his daughters were playing.
One of our highlights in our 5-year induction history was the appearance of Jimmer Fredette the year he got drafted into the NBA, flew back especially to come and speak at our dinner.
I remember being on the phone with you that weekend or those days between the draft, and he, of course, was in New York for the draft. I'm going to say that was on a Thursday night.
That's correct.
As I recollect, he couldn't even join his draft party because he was actually traded that night.
That's correct.
So he had to stay put and get everything in order. And then he was on a plane early the next morning to Sacramento. That's clear across the country.
Right.
And he had made a commitment to you to come to the dinner that year. And sure enough, he got back here on Sunday, and he appeared at the dinner. Jimmer is a great, great, great story, and he's just a superhuman being. And his commitment to follow through on commitments that he's made, and the work ethic he's shown to make himself into a great player. I mean, that was just such a great year to have a local player be the National Player of the Year, and I think we were all amazed. It just kept growing and growing and growing, the legend of Jimmer. And
John Wooden Award winner, Naismith Award winner, AP Player of the Year, leading scorer in the country, leading scorer in BYU history, just a phenomenal run.
And again, we had a wonderful evening watching him play up in the Glens Falls Civic Center against Vermont when BYU came to town. Again, a great gesture by the BYU people to bring him literally to his hometown. And we've talked about this, that could have, more than sold out that arena 2 or 3 times. And
Sure.
he did not disappoint. He put on a great show, and I think the Capital District can be very proud, and certainly his coaches and people who influenced him as a player up in Glens Falls should be very, 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 happy about, his development as a player. And hopefully there are good things on the horizon for him in the NBA.
Yeah. I'd also like to thank our board, Mike Lilac from Stillwater, who knows the upstate area as well as anybody and won a state championship with John Mueller, who's in the Hall of Fame also. Joe Lautis, you're a good friend for many years. Currently still an assistant coach at Schenectady High with his son Eric. Joe's in the Hall of Fame. Dominic Rayo from Troy, who was instrumental in helping to get this off the ground. So we really have a lot of help, and we've done a good job, I think, of researching and reaching out to people, and we're still having great classes and great response.
It's not an exact science, and you can make arguments either way. And I know when we first talked, it was going to be primarily for high school accomplishments, and then we said, you know what, there are people who've done great things at the college level and beyond that. Sam Perkins, while he spent his developing years and early years down in Brooklyn, I believe. He was in New York City, came up, played his last 2 years at Shaker. I mean, there aren't many people that can top that resume. He had success at Shaker and then played on great teams at North Carolina, along with Michael Jordan and Worthy and people like that. And then had a long, successful NBA career, and along the way, played, got an Olympic gold medal. So, he's a very, very, very special person. We've been very fortunate in this section to have great players, and you put together a nice crew of people to discuss and evaluate and come up with decisions. And, Joe's certainly a very successful coach, evidenced by, his induction at the New York State Hall of Fame. Same for Mike Lilac, and it's just been a great history. We're fortunate in that we're telling history, and it just happens to be a very rich history.
And so many of the people have come back, like Sam and Jimmer and Barry Kramer and Dick Grubar and Tiki Burden, and they've all managed to come back and tell stories and appear.
Right, they're reunions. I remember, Dickie Grubar coming back. I don't know if people remember Dick Grubar, but wow, what a player he was. Started at point guard for 3 North Carolina teams that went to the Final Four in an era when the ACC was the only league with the postseason tournament. So Carolina had to win the postseason tournament and then, win various NCAA games to get to the Final Four. And he was just a great player. And I know when you called North Carolina, I believe Dean Smith quickly said, I hope Dick Grubar is part of this class, because he was one of Dean Smith considered Dick Grubar one of his favorite players.
That is exactly what he said verbatim.
Yeah, I remember seeing him play at Bishop Gibbons. He was just an unbelievable player. Controlled the game, saw the court, made others around him better. All those things that you like in a player. And
still in great shape today, Paz. He could still play basketball right now.
It looks like it. I know he had some knee problems, I believe, but he was fun to watch. And that was a great era, the 1960s, starting probably with Barry Kramer in 1960. And, then you had, Pat Riley as a big name in 1963, who went on to Kentucky, and the rest is history. Grubar was the class of, 65, I believe, at Bishop Gibbons. At the end of the decade, you had Sidney Edwards at Linton, who went on to the University of Houston and then played with the Harlem Globetrotters. And in between, you had lots of very good players who played at Princeton, Cornell, and other places around America.
Yeah. Last year, we had some interesting inductees. Barry Cavanaugh, who actually coached a year for Doc Sowers, was very entertaining, as was Josh Duell, a local Schenectady-raised child who went to Siena and played in, I think, 3 NCAA tournaments. This year we also had Derek Roland, who was a star for the Albany Patroons, and probably their most notable name, and also got to the NBA with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yes, again, we bring back, names from the basketball history of the Capital District. Barry was a great player at Rensselaer High and then played for Doc Sowers at Albany State and had a great career there, and did substitute for Doc for 1 year. Josh Duell, he's one of my favorites. He played at Niskayuna and then CBA, but I was fortunate enough to be an assistant coach on an Empire State Games team where Josh was a player, and we won the gold medal that year. And I think I can speak for the other regions and the people who were present for that tournament. Josh would have been the MVP if there was such an award. He just was a smart player. He took charges. He had good timing on defense. He ran the offense very well. He scored for us. He actually got hurt early in the tournament, but played through it. And then he went on to UVM originally, and then Siena. And you're right, he did play in numerous NCAA tournaments. And actually, he was on the UVM team that upset Syracuse a few years ago.
We also have quite a few players who have had great careers who have gone on to play in Europe, like Steve D'Agostino.
Steve's a great player, very skilled.
Does he remind you of Jimmy at all?
He does. He does. It's funny you say that. Guilderland played CBA for the sectional championship Stevie's senior year, and Jimmy was with us at Hudson Valley. CBA got out to a big lead, and there were a lot of those same players that had been on our Empire State team. The front line of Monahan, Bova, and Duell was very formidable, and CBA was considered probably a pretty good favorite in that game. But I believe if the game had gone maybe 1 minute longer, Guilderland would have come back and won it, and it was strictly because of Stevie. He was a smart player. He could break you down on defense, and like Jimmy, he could hit the outside shot or he could go by you, and he was very good when he went by you. If the help defense came over, he found the open guy. So he was someone who made others around him better, and that was just a beautiful Guilderland team to watch. And I left the gym that night feeling pretty bad for them because they had come close. And do you
remember what the final score? How close was it? Was it a couple points?
It was down to just a few points. Yeah, very, very close. And CBA just held on, and that was a very good CBA team.
Yeah,
they had some athleticism in the backcourt and a big front line and a skilled front line, and they knew how to win. And that was a Guilderland team that moved the ball beautifully, ran good stuff. Ron Osinski does a great job, and but Stevie had a great career at St. Rose, and now he did play in Europe, and now he works with players and helps to make them better players. And I have a lot of confidence in Stevie D'Agostino as a player, as a teacher of the game.
Chris Fagan, Catholic high star, went to Colgate, actually played in Ireland for a couple of years. And then we also have James Thomas still playing in Italy, Rayshawn Freeman in France. John Diekelman's coaching in Germany still. Willie Dean.
Willie Dean had a great career overseas. He's still playing overseas. He was in Vladivostok in Russia. I believe actually James Thomas this year played in Israel. Wow. I've occasionally seen some specials on TV about Israeli basketball, and there's James, still rebounding the ball and playing as hard as ever. Yeah, there have been people that have gone over to Europe and played. Julie McBride on the women's side has gone over there to play, and Kate Fagan played overseas for a while, and it's just been it's a nice way for people to wind down their careers.
Yeah, it's another option for players now that don't quite reach the NBA, and it's competitive basketball there, and we're very fortunate to have so many gifted players from Section 2 be able to play at a higher level in D1 or in Europe afterward, and Jim are in the NBA. So
when you think about it, in the span of 55 years, you had Barry Kramer, who was vying for Player of the Year. You had Pat Riley, who was the best player on the number one team in the country at Kentucky. You have Jimmer at the other end, who became the National Player of the Year, and that was at the same time that Taylor Battle was lighting it up in the Big Ten.
State.
So
right.
We've been very fortunate to have many great players. Not enough time here to mention them all.
Maybe we'll get back together and do it again.
That would be nice.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Rene.